Hi everyone, delonewolf here, and welcome back for another EVE Online video. Today's video is going to be a discussion video from the captain's quarters. As you can see, the main reason is of course that CCP released the economic numbers for the month of August. I think it's a pretty important one because during EVE Talk we saw some indications that the summer slump was ending, especially the last one, PI doing really massive improvements all of a sudden. Advanced PI was strong all summer, but even those are seemingly seeing some upwards pressure, which would be normal considering that more advanced PI material is needed in capital production. And so I'm really curious to see what these economic numbers will look like, because a bit of recovery in industry could of course be some pretty good news. As always, if you want to follow or read this dev blog for yourself, you can go to eveonline.com. You click on the news link at the top left, and then that brings you to the news site, which also includes the monthly economic report for August 2021. And that one looks like this. So let's take a look. Right away, we're seeing that there is a bit of recovery in the industrial output. So this is the first chart, definitely one of the main ones that we want to take a look at. Value destroyed, value mined, and value produced, where pretty obviously here in April we got this massive spike in production due to the industry changes that CCP had announced, increasing complexity for larger stuff, increasing cost as well, and increasing the number of, I would say, areas you need to be active in order to make capital ships, super capital ships, and things like that, including PI, gas mining, and more. So it was definitely a daunting proposition. Lots of production happening for those large ships, which does give us, I think, a nice cushion or a nice bit of extra to weather this storm, but the immediate response, I think, also exacerbated by the fact that we're talking June, July, August, so summertime, definitely a lot less activity in EVE Online, just seasonally speaking, and yeah, that just became a double whammy, bringing the industry output in EVE Online to its lowest point all of a sudden right here at the start of July. So that was really not good, but you can see mid-July we start to slowly recover, and even here in August up until September we kept going up. Now we're still nowhere near the previous average levels before the industry changes, and I'm even seeing a little bit of hesitation at the tail end here of that production chart. Main reason, in my opinion, is we're seeing it in the industry window all the time. Freighters, orcas, all of these are still not economical to produce, meaning that the estimated average input cost is still higher than the estimated output cost of those jobs. And I'm pretty sure that we're seeing a similar situation in capital ships like carriers, dreadnoughts, and especially Titan super carriers and things like that. Although there it is a different story, because of course they're not really traded on the market in the same way that freighters and orcas are. It's mostly, you know, alliances that keep those things in check, and trading would happen between contracts with intermediaries and things like that. But overall, definitely still not a full recovery, although the end of the summer slump to me is confirmed here. We still have to make up for basically the added complexity and the current situation for capital and super capital ships, which of course this bump here is a part of the problem. They've made so many extra freighters, extra carriers, extra large ships that at the moment that price is still depressed because of all of that extra supply that exists. So it'll take a little bit of time before all of that is fully recovered, and before regular industrialists, I'm going to say, are also seeing a profit margin on building a freighter, building an orca, and selling it on the open market. Within alliances, within nullsec, the entire dynamic is completely different, of course. I do believe that there the Imperium will be massively rebuilding, so that should put some upward pressure on this as well. And then that a bit of an arms race may be starting, and if they want to be ready for the next war, they will need carriers, they will need dreadnoughts, and so I do think that it's mostly nullsec that will be putting in the effort to keep the furnaces burning and to get industry back up. Mining, total mining actually up a little bit as well in August. Not super clear to see. Mining prices have been pretty stable, I would say, over the last couple of months, with Isogen actually moving up a little bit. And so seeing this upwards move here in the amounts shows a little bit of increase in activity as well. And then the decrease in destruction, of course, is probably the end of the hot war between the Imperium and pretty much the rest of nullsec. But yeah, as I've said, I'm seeing this as a lull because quite a few bridges will have been burnt during everything that happened in that war. And I do think that another arms race is up. This is a typical cycle in EVE Online as well, where you know, there's a retreat, everyone, you know, crabs, as they say, makes a lot of ISK, makes a lot of stuff, just gets ready for the next war, and you never know when or how that one is going to start. So I would say pretty good to see this recovery, and yeah, the summer slump is definitely ending, although we're nowhere near actually getting a full recovery just yet. But yeah, CCP still has a lot to announce as well. Economic figures per region. I mean, if you're in nullsec, this could be pretty interesting, but I myself don't know enough about all the different politics and mechanics that happen in here that this could indicate. So we are going to take a look at total destroyed value by region, but we get a better chart for that. So let's open up this one, Delft. Right here at the top, obviously, the end of the war, the whole retreat of the enemy, the Imperium, you know, being able to successfully defend their small homesteads. But from there, now the expansion is beginning, and all of that did come at a cost in the retreat and things like that as well. Also, lots of structures from those that were attacking and that have retreated had to be destroyed. So quite a bit of destruction here in Delft, cleaning up before the Imperium can rebuild, and I think in their own words, bigger and better, so that they're even more able to defend the next time, which is kind of interesting. I think it's probably not the first time, but on this scale, I really do feel like it's one of the first time where an eviction completely failed, and that the Imperium will now have a chance to learn their lesson and to make it even harder to get dislodged from Delft by anyone. And the Forge is next. That's still Jita, of course. Lots of suicide ganking. War decks tend to gravitate around these trade hubs, especially the largest one as well. So that's kind of normal. Then we get the Citadel, Lone Trek, doing pretty good. Veil of the Silent, Sync Liaison. It's more, yeah, it's nullsec tied to the war. And then, of course, trade hubs that attract a lot of activity in highsec. Total mining value by region, that could definitely be interesting. Veil of the Silent is still first, right? So still regularly, I think it is Fraternity they're called, and Chinese players that are you know, doing their bit in the arms race, and they actually have a little bit of catching up to do as well, because if I'm not mistaken, they're way newer than, let's say, the Imperium to the server. Then we get the Forge, so lots of highsec mining around Jita as well. But look at that domain actually competing with the Forge for how much is being mined. And if you remember, I made a video about PI and minerals in Amar as well a while ago, and this was definitely something that we noticed, is that mineral prices were actually cheaper, especially for some of the highsec minerals in Amar as well. And this is clearly shown here as well. You get pretty much the same supply, but a much smaller trade hub, and as a result, they're forced to sell those minerals at a much lower price. So there's basically, although it's a super long route, a route to get cheap minerals in the domain and then to even sell them at a profit in the Forge at the moment, just because of how much mining potential exists in the Amar Empire, which is actually huge. I think it's the largest empire with the largest number of highsec systems, and thus you get a number like this, which is pretty impressive. I should also mention that Veil of the Silent is not like 3, 4, 5x the highsec region, like the busiest highsec regions or something like that. This to me feels like it is absolutely possible that not too much of this is botted. It's always inevitable that some botting will be in all of these statistics, by the way, not just in Veil of the Silent. But this doesn't feel like it's an imbalance that's going to completely break the game or anything like that. And honestly, I think Delve will be starting to move up in the rankings on this one pretty soon as well. As in the latest EVE talk, someone mentioned that the reason the Galente metamaterial went up in price so much is because it is needed in producing the mining drones. And yeah, the Imperium, of course, is known for having quite a few Rorquals and being very organized around like moon mining and things like that as well. So yeah, Delve, I think we can expect that one to start to move up as they completely rebuild. Then we've got NPC bounties by region with Delve. Look at that, catching up straight away to Veil of the Silent. So those two now head and shoulders above the rest, with the Kalevala expanse being next. Honestly, being big, being dedicated and being organized makes a very big difference. And yeah, motivation is a big part of that. I basically also feel like the Imperium feels like they've won the war. And as a result, they've got a motivated player base that goes out there. We can rat again. Let's rat up a storm. Let's catch up to Veil of the Silent, and they almost did that here in August. Very impressive. Twice the next region, but here again, is this automation or is this just the largest, most organized groups that are managing to have more staying power in all of those ratting spaces? I do believe that this is again not completely crazy a number either. Then we've got total production value by region. The Forge, of course, still first, and then Delve really coming up to over half the total output of the Forge. Very impressive, of course. This could be a little bit of both sides still, where maybe at the beginning of August we still had the attackers doing some industry there as well to try and get like Tech 1 ships and keep their fleets up and running. But the second part is, of course, going to be the rebuilding of the Imperium as well. So we could have this output not just being the Imperium, but also being early August part of the other side. Then we get the Citadel, Lone Trek, so lots of stuff happening in High Six still as well. And then Veil of the Silent doing their best. And I think, again, a sign of the arms race where, the most organized, largest and most dedicated groups are, of course, the ones that have the capacity to get that capital production done, despite the fact that it's not economical. But that doesn't matter to these Nullsec groups because they just want to have more carriers available, more dreadnoughts available, more large ships available. And so they are pushing all of that industry, while the rest of us, smaller players, smaller groups, we do have that profit incentive that we need to look at. And that is why, in general, industry is down, and the Nullsec groups are actually pretty impressive in the numbers that they're putting out on this chart. Trade balance by region. Let's take a quick look here. I don't think, these regional charts, if you want to really dive into the details, obviously go take a look for yourself. But I would say that the total market value by region, I definitely prefer these types of charts. So here we, of course, still have the Forge head and shoulders above anyone else. Second trade hub, the domain reaching 50,000 billion. Then we get Delve, which again could be a little bit of both sides there. Not exactly sure how this is calculated. But very impressive, of course, to see a Nullsec region being the third largest region market-wise in the game. But yeah, Jita, of course, is the undeniable king at this point. I would say that Amar is pretty impressive, but this again, compare the sizes of the markets and thus how much trade is in all likeliness happening there to how much mining was done in the Forge and then in domain, and that explains why there's way more pressure on mineral prices, especially High-Sec mineral prices in domain, than there is in the Forge, which is something that we took a look at as well. So kind of cool to see that confirmed. Here we get the details without JITA itself, so Amar getting above 50,000 billion. Delve is next, half the size of Amar, very impressive. Then we've got Sync Liaison, so Dodixie above 50,000, and then Lone Trek and Metropolis. All right, in the previous months that I've checked it and that I still remember, I think those two were pretty much equivalent, but now it looks like Lone Trek is pushing up a little bit, and then Metropolis. Putting those two together, though, you're getting very close to a Delve. Yeah, not yet a domain, but very close to a Delve size. So the entire Minmatar trade hub is larger than the Dodixie trade hub, than the Galente one, which is also something that I had felt was happening for a couple of weeks to a little bit over a month. I think I flew around in Minmatar space, and this is really something that the loss of Nyarja to the Triglavians has done. Basically, it pulled JITA and Amar way away, and quite a bit of activity has found their way in the middle, which is Minmatar space at the moment, which is pretty cool to see actually how one system is so pivotal to how trade works and all of that stuff. So very cool to see here as well. With the domain still 50,000, I don't think it's that bad, and it is its own trade hub on its own side of the galaxy, which is really cool to see. Then total contracts, I don't think that's gonna be too interesting. Although Delve, maybe we could take a quick look at that as well. Delve is number 2 in that one. Again, kind of normal. Once you're talking supers, capitals, things like that, contracts do play a much larger role than just the open market. So that makes a lot of sense. Imports and exports, this can be used, I think, to look at like fleet movements and things like that. But again, I don't know enough about the politics to really give you guys any backstory on that. So what I would rather go to is the ISK sinks and faucets next. Let's take a look at that. Commodities market, so mostly blue loot, but a lot of other stuff here as well. Still at number 1. Then bounty prizes, at least pushing away ahead again of the corporate payouts, so the Sasha incursions. The redeemed ISK tokens still coming in, very interesting as well. I think someone calculated that considering the information we got from the ISK tokens, it looks like EVE Online should have a minimum of 110,000 active Omega accounts during the period that these ISK tokens were given out, which is actually, in my opinion, a pretty decent and healthy number. I was decently surprised that it's above 100,000, and that should be like the low end, because I was just not even calculating people that would be lazy, didn't know about the login rewards and things like that. A part of it will also, I think, be some reactivations because of it. That's definitely part of the equation. So active Omega accounts is not necessarily the exact same thing, but overall, a pretty impressive number, especially this being during the summer. Then we have the ESS bank payments. Someone mentioned that people are overestimating. Well, ESS bank payouts doesn't necessarily, of course, mean that these are payouts for the new keys that they have unlocked, but it's a sizable amount. It's 9.8 trillion. If you add that to the bounty prizes, you are getting up to 30 billion, which is, getting a little bit closer to that commodities market as well. Overall, in the last month, we started with, man, that's a pretty impressive increase. 1,334 trillion ISK. At the end of the month, we were above 1,400 trillion active ISK delta, quite a lot. Main reason for that big boom is, of course, going to be that the sinks will be much lower, since in August CCP started 3 months of reduced taxes for trading, which is potentially also a reason why the war had its turnaround, because apparently one of the sites was very dependent on the trading station in Perimeter for income. But due to that tax change, JITA actually again became the best place to trade, even cheaper than the player-owned trade hub next door. And so, yeah, these things will have fallen quite drastically because of that. Next chart is the commodity faucets over time. Sleeper components, again, blow loot at a very high pace at the moment. Wormhole space, the people that are ratting blue loot, I think, are pretty happy with the fact that, they're not seeing too much mention of of wormhole space when it comes to the development, although they would potentially love some cool stuff. For the last couple of years, it's mostly been nerfs, so them being able to just still rat up a storm with sleeper components will make them pretty happy. Triglavian data has gone up, something that we noticed as well, by the way, in Eve Talk, because we are keeping an eye on a Tech 2 Triglavian cruiser that has gone down in price substantially, and that should be because of increased availability of the Triglavian resources themselves. So Abyssal Running should be doing pretty well, I think, and also activity in Pogven, I think because of opening the gates and things like that, will have increased quite nicely. Overseer effects actually going down a little bit. Bounty encrypted bonds, not sure what... Oh, that's going to be... No, that existed before the keys. Not exactly sure if that has something to do with it. But that's up quite a little bit. But yeah, sleeper loot still very stable at a high point. Would be my main takeaway here. The breakdown for the service fees, I don't think that... Oh, yeah, maybe that will change a little bit. Let's see about the broker's fees. Player to NPC, player to player. Yeah, there we go. Broker's fees, massively dominated again by player to NPC. And this could get worse in the upcoming months because, again, the tax changes. These broker fees, it's actually just as good or even better to go and trade in an NPC station. Industry jobs, though, is the exact reverse because there you've got a big advantage of going to a player station in order to do your industry. So that's 53 billion, double that in the player, over double that in the player jobs. Jump clone activations, that's still NPC station. Well, there is a safe place, so I personally do think that lots of people have at least a couple of jump clones in NPC stations so that they always have a place to retreat to. Officer rental, same story. PI, of course, massively dominated by players, but showing that there's still exports happening to the NPCs as well. Same with import tax, repair bills, massively dominated. Oh, that's because it's free in in player-owned stations. And then player NPCs, this is the reprocessing tax, exactly the same thing. You want a decent yield, and usually for reprocessing, taxes aren't that high when it's set by players. So that's something that's clearly being done in a player-owned structure. So trade has moved back to NPC stations, but industry reprocessing, that kind of stuff is definitely still happening in the player-owned structures. Next up, the top 10 ISK sinks over time. Let's take a look at that. That feels like it's maybe something. Oh no, it's the redeemed ISK tokens. I thought it was just the sinks here, but yeah, the top side is of course the faucets. So how is ISK being created in the game? And so again, as I've said, this should indicate around 110,000 active Omega accounts from this ISK token spike that we have. You can see the bounty prices catching up to the commodities market, so bounties have gone up. We saw that as well. Delph more active, Fraternity still doing really well. Corporate reward payout, so the Sancha incursions pretty stable. And then we've got Triglavian invasions going up. Yeah, Triglavian activity, it still has a niche, it has a player base, and it's actually going up, it seems. The ISK tokens are slowly going down as players have been still putting that out of the redeeming queue. But then the faucets, of course, here is the big reason why ISK itself has gone up so much over the last month in the game. Transaction taxes, which would have gone towards maybe 0.7 trillion or something like that right here, definitely over 0.5 trillion after the tax increase happened, is now back to a much lower point, but it does incentivize active trading, of course. And so it's going to be an interesting experiment where I think a lot of players are hoping that CCP makes this permanent, but they also, of course, have to be a little careful as to how much ISK is in the game and be wary of inflation as well. So always an interesting balance, but CCP does have, of course, all the tools in hand, just like a central bank, an all-powerful central bank, in fact, to do whatever is needed or deemed necessary. So we will see, but we should have at least 2 more months of very cheap taxes, which in my opinion should be inflationary and could also be part of the reason why we're seeing Plex go up like this, and why we are seeing Plex actually potentially breaking through that 2.7 million, which it hasn't done all that sustainably over the last year. Next up, we've got the money supply. Again, same story. So you've got the month of August here with a nice big jump. This is not exactly because there's that much more ISK that's being created in the game, but more because there's that much less ISK that's being taken out of the game. We are at, again, well, we actually just recovered our high point from June 2019, it would seem. Characters gone up substantially, corporations a little bit less. But yeah, we're back above 1,400 trillion, as was indicated a couple charts back as well. Velocity of ISK, this will of course make CCP pretty happy, I think. That it's a little bit, taking a little bit of a dive at the tail end of August here, but clearly the tax changes have done pretty well to sustain this, I would say, although not that big of an impact. It happened in August, so I would have maybe thought we would see more of an upswing here in August as well. So yeah, velocity of ISK not that high and not that big of a move from the tax changes. Then the economic indices, this could be interesting as well, because finally the mineral price index is coming back down on the chart itself. A little bit of pressure on the mineral prices, but overall I feel like over the entire summer we've been pretty stable. Titanium 4.5, pyrite 18 ISK, Mexalon, that one definitely took a bit of a beating, 65-ish, I think, 60-65-ish is its price range, but I think there's still growth potential in isogen. Noxium extremely expensive, and then we've got Zydrine and Megasite that have been super stable all summer and even before the summer, I think. I'm not sure if Morphite, of course, will be in this mix, because that just took a big hit because of increased availability. But yeah, mineral price index coming back down should mean lower input costs overall potentially, and thus eventually we will find our new balance in industry. But there is no doubt that large ships are more valuable, more expensive, more complex, because it's not just minerals that are dictating how you're going to make or how much they are going to cost. And so they could still actually, in my opinion, go up in price from here as we use everything that's been massively built in the month of April. And Q4, again, when CCP has decided to end scarcity, could be the time when we're starting to feel that, when we're starting to basically run out of old built types of large ships, and then of course we'll have to have that new price discovery. But that could happen just as CCP announces new ways of, potentially putting pressure on the input costs even more. So overall, yeah, looking pretty promising. I would say if you are potentially an industrialist or something like that, or a trader, this is a great time to get ready for what's coming down the pipeline. This could be like an opportunity for all of that. Primary producer index also took a little bit of a dive as a result, but after a pretty nice spike as well, so where things got very expensive. And at the moment I do also feel like, sure, battleships have found a new range. They're a bit more expensive, but they're not like outlandishly expensive either. So I feel like it's a pretty good situation to be in general for like Tech 1 stuff when it comes to cost. Small stuff is very cheap, very affordable, use it and lose it, no problem. Once you go to battlecruiser or battleships, yeah, that starts to cost. And then of course the capital ships, as I've said at the moment, rebuilding that just costs way more than the estimated price. Secondary, I think, refers to Tech 2, up a little bit, but nothing too drastic. Most of the volatility out of the what are they called, not the metamaterials, but the carbide and carbonite type items has gone away. We're still paying a premium, but it's all easily absorbed by the market. I think lower demand has kept this in check as well over the summer. And then the CPI, again, rather inaccurate number, because it's massively dominated by other items like vanity items and things like that can cost quite a lot, skins, and so as a result, yeah, the CPI, it looks like everything is really cheap, but that's not necessarily the case. And that's it usually for the charts that I check. Yeah, there we go. And then you can go through in all the details if all the indices have been completely, you get all the details down here, but this gets a little bit too complex, I think. But in general, I personally am pretty happy. One thing that I clearly missed as well, which I should have seen from the chart when we saw what was happening here, as in July we started to get a pickup in activity, is I clearly missed that July PI bottom. It's both in Namar and in JITA. It's very clear in July we hit 1-year low points, rock bottom prices, and you could get massive amounts of PI for just ridiculously low prices as demand had completely evaporated around here. I missed it, but we could have done some really big buys, which just from this Eve talk you could have made quite a bit of a killing. So again, this is in my opinion just a start as well. This is a great time to get ready if you've got industry plans. Try to buy the cheapest resources, try to get ready, maybe get your BPOs in order that you won't. I've actually been improving a couple of mine as well. And if you're a trader, this is still probably opportunity territory for a lot of the economy in EVE Online as well. It will depend, of course, it always does. Nobody has, a crystal ball or anything like that. It will depend on what CCP exactly does, what they announce. But yeah, we get an EVE Vegas coming, so we should have quite some interesting announcements, maybe trailers, things like that should drum up hype, which in my opinion means that we should see increased activity towards the winter, which is generally a high point in EVE Online coming after the summer. So exciting time to look at all of this, and I would say a great time to get ready for what's coming down the line for EVE Online. That's going to be it for this look at the August numbers in EVE Online. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.